Okay, so getting back into our coverage over, well, the X-Men, we're going to pick up with another annual. And I kind of realized that we have been covering a lot of annuals on the channel, but unfortunately, right now for our reading order, we got to cover a few annuals when it comes to X-Men comics. But either way, we do pick up with Uncanny X-Men Annual number 97. Now, this is really more of the X-Men working together with the Brotherhood. But also, we gotta have a little brief conversation about Genosha as well. You see, there was this earlier storyline where Colossus' brother, better known as Mikhail, went out of his way to kill off the Morlocks. Now, we were also kind of left to believe that he also had committed suicide as well in that process. Now, after a while, we did learn that no, that him and the Morlocks were transported into a different reality. And so in that other dimension, time moved differently. And so for the Morlocks, they grew up, but so did the next generation. They grew up and became adults, but they also came back over to the main Marvel universe. And the reason why, because they wanted to get revenge against the human race, and they called themselves Genosha. Now, you did have the X-Men stop them, but after you had the X-Men stop them, well, you had Storm, who was the leader of the Morlocks before you had Mikhail, supposedly killed them off. She told them, you're going to lead the sewers, but you're going over to Africa to basically build a small village in Africa for yourselves, but also live a peaceful life out there. And so for Genosha, that part right there is very important for today's storyline. And the reason why, because as we do get into the opening pages of the storyline, we do pick up with the X-Men going out of their way to try to protect Genosha from an attack being done by Humanity's Last Stand. Now, Humanity's Last Stand is a group we have talked about in the past that basically is one of those mini groups out there in Marvel Comics who are going out of their way to try to kill off the mutant race. And so when it comes to Humanity's Last Stand, that has been their goal to, attack different places that has huge groups of mutants like Genosha's village. Now, while you do have the X-Men going out of their way to fight against Humanity's Last Stand, we are then introduced to a few characters who are somewhat important for the overall storyline. Like, for example, the idea of Boost. When it comes to Boost, he is part of Genosha, but Boost has the ability to charge up other people who are mutants and their powers. And so, for example, for Cannonball, who's part of the X-Men, he does get a small boost from Boost. Now, there is another character out there named Tether, but she's not really important for the overall storyline, but they're also there for the entire event as well. But when it comes to Genosha, once you have Storm move Genosha over to this area, well, they were left protected by a character known as the Guard. Now, for the Guard, he's really used as a way to express how the entire village for Genosha, or the Morlocks, are truly upset with the idea of Storm being their leader. And the reason why, because Storm is never around. You see, for Storm, even though she is their leader, she's always with the X-Men dealing with bigger issues. But for Genosha and also for the Morlocks, they're really kind of like, no, you should be here for us. You are our leader. Like, you should be here to protect us. And so for the Guard and Tether, and also not only Boost, really more Tether and the Guard, they're really expressing the idea that after Storm had moved them away from the Morlock tunnels all the way over to Africa to build up a small village for themselves, that things have gotten worse because they've been attacked constantly by Humanity's Last Stand over and over again. And so you have those two characters attacking Storm and kind of talking about the idea of Storm no longer being their leader. Now, with Cyclops around, really Sam as well, Cannonball, you do have those two characters redirect everybody's energy to helping out the people who were just wounded in that last battle. But while you have the X-Men going out of their way to help out the people who were wounded in the last battle, you then have the Brotherhood appear. Now, the Brotherhood is being led by Havok. Now, for Havok, around his time in Marvel Comics, he was no longer part of the X family. And the reason why, because for Havok, there was a point in time where he was being controlled by Dark Beast and kind of being forced to work alongside with Onslaught. But for Havok, it was also the fact that he kind of got tired of the idea of mutants just constantly being attacked. And when it came to the X-Men, their main goal was to, protect both humans and mutants. But for Havok, he felt like mutants should be more protected than humans. But also, he's not really scared to cross some lines to get the job done. And so for Havok, he moved away from the X family and formed the Brotherhood alongside with two characters like Fatale and also Dark Beast. Now remember, Dark Beast is actually from the Age of Apocalypse reality. And here in a moment, we're going to talk more about Dark Beast here. But the reason why you have Havok here at the moment is because when it comes to Havok, he had learned that humanity's last stand is getting ready for an all-out attack against Gene Nation, but also the X-Men who are here in this area. And so for Havok, it's really more of him trying to get everyone ready, but at the same time, it's him kind of showing that he's possibly a better leader than Storm is. Now, before we see Storm and Havok talk it out, I want to shift over to Dark Beast, because with Dark Beast, we have to remember that he's the reason why we have the Morlocks, we have Gene Nation, because when it came to Dark Beast, when he arrived in the main Marvel universe after leaving Age of Apocalypse, well, he appeared in this reality 20 years in the past, just like Sugar Man. And so those two characters kind of been working behind the scenes when it came to different concepts in Marvel Comics, Genosha, but also, of course, Gene Nation. Either way, when it comes to Storm and also Havok, you do have the two sides kind of agree to work together, because it's the idea that right now an attack is coming. So should they really argue about the idea of like, what should Gene Nation do when it comes to Storm or possibly him? Like right now, their main focus should be protect the innocent people who are about to be attacked by an army of humans who are just wanting to kill off the Gene Nation group. And really, as we do switch over to humanity's last stand, we do learn that some of these people here are really wanting to attack Gene Nation because what Gene Nation did in earlier storylines. Because when it came to Marvel Comics, we had learned that Gene Nation was going out of their way to attack humans left and right. Some unfortunately got killed or seriously hurt. And so for some of the members here in this small group of humanity's last stand, they were people who were affected by Gene Nation because they targeted some of their family members. So they're kind of like, no, we're out here right now trying to get revenge against that group for what they have done to our people. And so now that leads into X-Men, Gene Nation, the Morlocks, and also the Brotherhood being attacked by humanity's last stand. Now, as the battle goes on, I kind of want to shift over to Storm. The reason why, because for Storm, as we all know, Storm is claustrophobic. And so with the idea of right now, in the middle of the battle, that phobia does pop up for Storm, she has to push on. And the reason why, because, well, there are people in need at the moment. And so for the guard, he was able to kind of pick up what's going on with Storm. But he also realized that Storm is doing what she can to still help out people, even though right now she's going through a very serious moment in her mind. Now, in the middle of the battle, you do have Cyclops kind of realize that both sides, the Gene Nation or Morlocks, and also the humanity's last stand, that they're technically out for blood. Like, they're not trying to just knock out each other. They're trying to kill each other. And for Havok, he's kind of like, well, do you blame them? Because technically, what Havok is saying that both sides have this reason to fight like that in this battle. For Gene Nation is to protect themselves, but at the same time for Gene Nation, they hated humans early on our coverage over the X-Men. And when it comes to, well, humanity's last stand, they're really there to get paid back for what Gene Nation did to other people across the world. And for Cyclops, he kind of realized that for Havok, in his voice, he sounds so bitter about what he just said. Now, you do have our heroes being able to really get out of this situation because of Dark Beast, being able to kind of bring down all the different armor suits that humanity's last stand was currently using in that battle to allow our heroes to win the actual battle. Now, for me personally, it kind of shows the X-Men are beginning to realize that Dark Beast is going to be around a lot more because the idea that he's now hanging out with Havok, but also like for Marvel, they're really trying their best to push Dark Beast around his time in Marvel Comics and not really Sugar Man. Like for Sugar Man, he only pops up here and there. With Dark Beast though, he's around a whole lot more often than Holocaust or even like Sugar Man. But either way, for our heroes, they do win. But now this kind of leads into a big question. What to do with their prisoners now, because you have our heroes being able to capture all the different members of this group of humanity's last stand who was attacking the Morlocks. Now, for Gene Nation, the Morlocks, they want to go ahead and kill off the humans. Of course, for the X-Men, that's a huge no-no. And so it does lead into a small debate, including Cyclops and also Havok, because for Cyclops, again, he hates the idea of killing people. But for Havok, he has been trying to cross lines recently. But this line right here, we kind of tell that Havok is not really ready to cross that line. But you didn't have somebody else being able to cross that line, and that would be Dark Beast. And with Dark Beast going out of his way to kill off all those prisoners, you now have everyone kind of wondering, like, did Havok mean to kill them all off? Now, for Havok, we get the idea that he didn't like Dark Beast killing off those prisoners, but at the same time, he still can't show emotion. He has to show that he's somewhat in control of his Brotherhood group. But you do have the guard kind of tell us after you have the Brotherhood leave that for the Gene Nation organization, our Morlocks, they're going to go solo, meaning that they don't want Storm to be their leader anymore. They kind of feel like that an outsider should not be their leader at all. And when it comes to Storm, she technically is an outsider because she's never truly around to be there for the Morlocks in this small village. And so you do have the Brotherhood leave, and they did recruit 2 other members to their group. That will be Boost and Tether. But yeah, for Storm, it's her being officially kicked out of the Morlocks organization. But with that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.